So where are you?
I am staying at a furnished house for a month while I figure out my lodging situation. Okay. So I'm staying here with a dog, and there's a very nice guy named JD who is staying in another room. And so, I'm hanging out in Arlington and am beginning to look for a place to stay.
Gotcha. So you are in our nation's capital adjacent.
Yes.
In the metro area.
Yes.
I'm in the greater Washington necroplex at this very minute. And had Virginia not purchased back Arlington in 1832 or whatever the hell, I would be in the nation's capital right now.
Did you go to the Kamala rally last night?
No, I should have, but I had stuff to do. I was working on the election day special that I'm planning to pump out next week, and I was doing that till about 10 o'clock at night, and that took precedence.
You didn't want to listen to Kamala say the same shit she's been saying the whole time in person?
I feel like I've got the gist now. I am unburdened by what has been. She is not Donald Trump. But you know what, Jen? She's not Joe Biden either. And a new generation has come together to make word salad and blah, 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 blah. So no, I skipped it. That might have been a good event, but no, I'll be here for the riots.
Smart. I wouldn't go either.
I think, it was a smart idea to hold your closing event at a place where every professional Democratic operative lives. They could just walk right out of their jobs and go support you.
But there were a lot of protesters out there too. I've seen them online.
What I didn't know was the beginning of her speech had a siren going off the entire time. And I didn't know, it didn't sound like a what's it called siren, like a police siren. It sounded like somebody who was trying to use noise pollution to disrupt the speech, which made me think it was a protester that was setting off some kind of, sound there. So I don't know. I saw a video of people waving a Palestinian flag in front of the overflow screen, but.
Yeah, there were people screaming at each other because the Kamala supporters were screaming at the Palestinian supporters who were screaming back into bullhorns, and it was a scene.
Yeah. Yeah. As you would expect. And thankfully our beloved Andrew Heaton was kept safely away, ensconced in Arlington.
Yeah.
I'll be one of the first dissident humorists taken up and shot in either regime. So don't worry, I'll get my just desserts here in a little bit. But in the twilight of the golden Biden years, I'm saying.
Would that be a goal or a failure point for you to become so caustic that you are arrested by some kind of authoritarian regime?
I'll say this: I'm definitely the anemic canary 10 miles away from the coal mine. So if I die, you all are fucked. If I die, you are so fucked. But if a guy in a van shows up and says, get in the van, you're a dissident, I'll be like, really? I got on the radar?
Really? Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Okay, then. Well, be sure to let my parents know that I was a medium deal.
Yeah, I don't know who's more likely to lock me up, actually. I don't know what to be afraid of.
It's like, I got on the list because of the If Pirates of the Caribbean Were Libertarian video? Wow, who knew?
If they start doing it by association, I have a lot of very weird friends. So if they start doing it by association, I can get rounded up. But if they're doing it based off my content, I think I'm pretty small potatoes.
Are you guys having any feelings about us being less than a week out from this election?
Yeah.
What are they?
I need to have this be over or else I'll die. Those are my feelings. My feelings are, I feel like I have put in everything I possibly can over this last month. I feel like the shows, I've been putting out like 2.5 hour long shows with multiple guests. I've spoiler alert for Friday's episode, but it's going to be the first ever PX3 2-parter. 2 hour plus episodes that are going to come out. So it's going to be interesting to see that I don't have to do it anymore. I'm excited. I'm excited for a different phase of it. So it's not It's like, man, I'm just so grinding on like every early vote, like John Ralston's Nevada early vote drop. How many mail votes in Clark County? Here we go. One more drop into the bucket. Do we believe the polls? Do we not believe the polls? Do I believe that the polls are hurting? What if it's 2022? What if it's 2020? If it's 2020, Donald Trump's going to win possibly the popular vote. If it's 2022, then Kamala's probably going to win by 2 points in Pennsylvania. We don't know. We don't know. We don't know.
I'm exhausted just listening to that.
I know. This is my head.
I feel much the same, Justin and Jen. I've been this week's going to be a big episode, and next week's going to be a big episode. They were this week. I hired a barbershop quartet, and I also hired a gospel singer to because I'm doing the lights just come back on. I think the lights just come back on. That's a good sign. That's a good sign.
That's good.
I'm doing a Garrison Keillor parody this week, but it's very extensive. And then next week I'm doing a musical about the election, and it's been massive. And so literally the day after the election, 80% of my thinking will be, how did the musical go? Was it well received? Everybody else will be thinking about the future of the country, but I'll be so nose to the grindstone. And then I'm planning to I've banked a couple episodes for the month of November and December where I can actually catch my breath and sleep more than 4 hours. So I'm looking forward to this being over from a work perspective as well.
It's funny how both of you answered that question being like, well, this is how it affects me. Like, I was kind of wondering, are you having feelings about the fact that like the country is
Jen, I am trying very,
you don't give a
very
fuck
hard.
Either way.
No, it's
I'm trying to distract myself through work is what I'm trying to do.
Well, also it's like, look, it's out of our hands. Like how much are we gonna ring? You know, it's like it's like getting mad about the weather. Who would do that?
Yeah, I'm kind of
right. I agree.
I've finished my congressional dishes. I've read all the bills I think need to be read. So this weekend, after we finish this, like I'm checking out, man. Like I'm not following the polls. I'm not.
Yeah, you got some time because after this election,
that's my busy season.
This is when they do a bunch of the dumb bullshit.
Yeah, this is the lame duck post-presidential election. This is the most dangerous time of the cycle when it comes to Congress, because they're the furthest away from an election. They're the furthest away from accountability. And this Congress hasn't done any of their jobs. So we have to fund the entire government and the defense authorization. They're going to stick all kinds of shit in there. It's like, it's the weirdest thing that we do, that we fire a bunch of people, but let them keep their power for 2 months.
Yeah.
And so this is when they get to like, oh, I'm going to work for this corporation. Let me do some favors for it before I, leave.
On the way out the door. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a really ugly time. And so I'm kind of resting up, and it actually doesn't start until after Thanksgiving. So the government funding runs out, I think, the week before Christmas, and the NDAA is usually done in December too. So really for me, my busy season starts in December and will go through whenever I'm done reading those 2,000-page bills. But like, that's what I'm gearing up for. But this is when the secrets
that seems
get
like
passed.
a good way to run a government, Jen, is we have one giant oh shit bill we have to do, or the world collapses, and don't read it too hard. Just do it because we got to. That seems like a good thing.
Yep, that's what we're headed towards. And what's even more fun is that most of the media has been working really hard on the election, so they're going to check the fuck out and not pay attention to any of it. And that's really frustrating.
Nailed
for
it.
Me.
You know what, Jen? I am planning to drink some caffeine and return to the Farm Bill when that comes out. I will join you in your ire and scrutiny when the Farm Bill comes out.
Yeah, the Farm Bill was supposed to be done already, and they didn't finish that either. But I think they'll probably kick that into next year. But we'll see. But this is exactly what I'm saying. Like, they might do all of it all at once, and when they do that, that's when it gets the least amount of scrutiny. So, my small audience will know what's in these bills, but that's probably about it.
Do we have any vibes before we get into the meat of our program as to who's going to win? Because we will not do another episode before the election.
There's no point in predicting at this point. I don't trust any polls. I don't trust my vibes. We'll see.
So what are the vibes that you don't trust, say?
Like I said, I am checking the fuck out. Like, I'm not paying attention to it for my own sanity. Like you said, we can't control it at this point.
Sure.
And we've said all we need to say.
Keaton?
Justin.
What do you
Justin,
I am a little nervous that is
all
where
right.
we're
Just
headed.
so we can tease that out. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Keaton, what do your vibes say?
I feel very confident, Justin, that the American people will win this election. We have come together as a country to select the two finest, sharpest, wisest, most responsible adults in our entire nation. And the American people are going to have a chance to vote between gold and platinum next week. We cannot lose. It cannot go wrong. It's all going to be hunky-dory, great, happy, joy fun.
Okay, let's go with that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
and I go back and forth on a daily basis on who I think is going to win. I've never been more than like $10 confident in the last 2 months.
On PX3, Heaton, we look, you can take your Nate Silvers, you can take your Poly Markets, you can take all your different non-traditional betting predictors. I put all my money on the how much will Andrew Heaton bet on this election, the chicken shit index, where he was initially $10 confident that Kamala was going to win. But then as we discussed things, he became $2.50 confident.
Yeah. I have
Kamala
an update.
Was going to win.
Justin, the chicken shit index is now $2 Trump. So
wow,
I barely
we flipped the polarity.
Yeah, but again, I go back and forth on this on a daily basis, where like I'll read stuff, and at the moment I've kind of gone back to about not quite as confident as I was before Biden dropped out. Before Biden dropped out, I was like, Trump is going to be our 47th, 49th, and 60th president. Like this is it's going to be a massive red tidal wave. I'm not that confident.
Thanks to AI, your favorite president will never leave you.
But I think it's leaning that direction. But maybe I'll be surprised. I want to say pleasantly surprised, but I'm not going to be thrilled with either outcome, to be honest with you. Both of them really irritate me. The supporters of both of them profoundly irritate me. And so like whoever wins, I'm really going to just be angry at the people gloating. So I suspect Trump will do it. I won't be happy with that. It's not my preferred outcome. He would be my third or fourth choice, but I think he'll probably pull it.
Yeah, as I will detail in the Friday episode, what I don't know is every indicator that I pay attention to screams that if Donald Trump wins, and probably wins by a bigger margin than he did in 2016, that it's like, well, duh. Like, what other signs did you need to see that was the case?
So you think Trump is...
Well, no. But then there is the caveat of, but when Democrats have gone to vote past Dobbs in special elections, which aren't big ones, in off-year elections, which aren't as big as presidential elections, and Donald Trump's not on the ticket, they've done well. They've overperformed. So maybe that's the duh. I'm looking at two gigantic duhs in the face, and there's the Dobbs one is a little bit more vibesy. It's a little bit more, well, the Republicans are going to pay for this until forever or whatever. But like on the other side, political issues, tend to kind of fade a little bit. I don't think that the Democrats have made as good of a case on the Dobbs thing as they should have. I think that they've left stuff on the table with that. So I don't know.
Do you think we'll have an answer on Tuesday night?
So here's the weird thing is that right now the polling is like 50-50, right? In the swing states, nationally, I've never seen it like this before, which also makes me worried that pollsters are just herding to a center because they just don't want to be wrong.
Yeah.
If that's the case and there is a polling error, then that means we have a shot at it being a blowout in either direction, or at least like a 2 or 3 point margin, which might be more than what mail-in votes would show. So there's a chance that it's over at, the more traditional 10, 11, midnight, 1 o'clock kind of election night. But who knows?
Oh, I'm so fucking nervous.
Can I give everybody a tip on that, by the way? Because this was I knew the outcome of the election pretty early, despite the fact that it was litigated for 2.5 months. If you're curious if it's on the edge, as it was last time, where it's disputed by one of the camps and the other one's not quite outright declared full-on victory, just put them on mute for a minute and watch their body language, and that'll tell you what's going to happen. That's what happened last time. Last time, Biden comes out and is like, hey, we're not done yet, but it's looking great. We think we've got this, and he's ebullient and he's happy. You could watch it on mute and know exactly what's happening. And you watch Trump come out and he's pissed off and he's snorting and he's just braced for impact. And you're like, oh, that guy lost. And because
that was right when Fox called Arizona. Fox called Arizona and he was fucking furious. He was like apparently screaming at Rupert Murdoch on the phone.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
He's a mature man.
Yes.
Can't wait for him to be president again. And here we go.
From Austin, Texas, I'm Justin Robert Young.
I'm Jen Briney.
And from a rental house in Arlington, Virginia,
I'm Andrew Heaton.
And that's Wallace, and we're not wrong. On this edition of the program, we're going to discuss Jeff Bezos declining any Washington Post presidential endorsements going forward and whether or not that's a good or a bad thing. And then the war of things that you shouldn't say after your presidential candidate does a closing argument. Tony Hinchcliffe, Joe Biden, we see who said the worst thing. All that plus your emails. We do have some business to take care of. First, a gift from the Moto Mortician.
Mortician?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
They sent us a wax sealed envelope that I am now opening. This has in calligraphy, Dear Jen.
Oh.
I am writing after listening for some time. I've purchased 1.5 shares.
Just never end.
To not mock, but to show my support, as jury suggested. However, I can see your misgivings. I personally have only flown Southwest, so I agree. Elliott Management does no good for them. Please, Jen, lead us at the shareholders meeting. Sincerely, the Moto Mortician. That has come in a sealed envelope.
Can I just say hats off for sending a letter with a wax seal and calligraphy?
know.
Because that is not what I anticipated. The buildup was very funny. The buildup
I
was
thought
very
I was
funny.
safe.
This is the only way that I would not read it before the show, too. Because you have to crack the wax seal on the show. You have a wax seal letter. So if you ever want any wild shit said on the show, then you got to send it right in calligraphy. Send it in a wax seal.
If I bite it, send my corpse to that guy. He's now my official mortician for the show.
Yeah. He is out of St. Augustine, Florida. We do not have our
never mind. I won't be
emails.
buried in Florida.
Well, you could possibly get the Fountain of Youth. So we will not be reading our emails for two reasons. Number one, I sent all of them directly to Jen.
Did you?
Because they were all very complimentary, explaining that nobody ever meant to have this be a malicious thing. In fact, they are all just looking for leadership from Jen Briney to lead the righteous hordes against the corporate raiders. And because Southwest capitulated to Elliott Management and agreed to readjust their board, but Southwest gets to keep their CEO. So, Southwest
is there even going to be a meeting?
There will be a shareholders meeting. And we still do now have an investment group. We still can raise some hell. What we were told by many people who are more experts in this game is that there are very rarely physical meetings anymore. In that they have basically COVID made a lot of them virtual, which a lot of the companies like because they don't have to deal with a circus and they don't have to spend money on it. However, if it is a virtual convention, I would say, depending on whether or not we have buy-in from the team, not trying to push or bully anybody, but we could go up to Dallas where there is a major media outlets. And I believe that's where Southwest is headquartered. We could put together like a party at a hotel near their headquarters and have our own little mini shareholders meeting as they do it virtually, which I will assure you has a good shot to get actual media attention.
I think that's a really fun idea.
That sounds fun. If these people will actually show up, that's the thing. There's a lot of people that are willing to go on Robinhood and buy a share, but you need to fucking show up now.
I would say check your email.
You know what?
There's a lot of pledges to be there in person.
I guarantee you, I know I've got a decent sized, let me rephrase this. I am confident that I can get 20 people to show up to events in Dallas because I've done it before with stand-up. And if I go on my show and I'm like, hey, you just have to buy one Robinhood share, one share of Southwest.Robinhood, and then you get to hang out with us at our shareholders. I promise you, we'll get at least a dozen people, probably 20 or 30.
Is there any chance that this could affect the company's decision to like not ruin the airline?
Yeah. Absolutely.
I mean, how do we even get a chance to talk if it's virtual? There's got to be thousands or if not millions of shareholders.
If we got media coverage, no, we wouldn't have the ability to vote, but if we got media coverage and you were able to shame whoever it is, Elliott Board of Management or whatever, and that affected stock prices or it started going down or something like that, yeah, I think there's a
I mean, the point of a meme stock, which we would be leveraging, or at least the threat of a meme stock, is that a popular uprising can threaten the leverage that a management company like Elliott has. Elliott Management has money that they can leverage to do what they want with the company. And if the company is either flailing or has poor leadership, Southwest at times has been both over the last 5 years, then that is a very powerful weapon against them. It's why they had to capitulate and put Elliott Management people on their board. However, if you have a popular uprising of people that are united in one single purpose, if even just to make, this Elliott Management sweat, then that means something. Elliott Management started a podcast about this.
I heard that.
Yeah.
I need to listen to it, these bastards.
So they're coming into our area. They find new media to be valuable enough that they did a boring 15-minute press release regurgitated as a podcast. So like,
yeah,
I would say it is, again, everybody has their own free will, but there's a lot of people that believe in Jen Briney. That's what the consensus was in the emails.
All right, I'll read the emails.
Read the emails.
I will.
I don't email. I usually only email good information that I think both of you guys would appreciate, but it's too long or it's, an email about an email for the show or good news. I very rarely send anything other than stuff I think is that.
Which means, are you editing and only sending me the stuff you want me to see in this regard? Are there a bunch of people being like, go Elliott? And you're like, I'm just not going to share
There's nobody that's saying go Elliott.
Okay.
There's there's a small minority that's like, why doesn't Jen have a sense of humor? But other than that, that's pretty much it.
It's not that I don't have a sense of humor. I legit didn't get it.
Yeah.
Like I did not understand the joke. And I think I've been open about that.
That was the vast majority. The vast majority of everybody was like, hey, look, we love Jen. We want Jen to be on the team. We're looking for a leader. We're trying to coax her off the sidelines.
Okay.
Let's talk about Jeffrey Bezos. The Washington Post will not endorse Kamala Harris for president this cycle, nor will they endorse anyone else going forward. This after a Washington Post owner Jeff Bezo spiked an already written endorsement last week, leading to staff resignations and subscriber attrition. In a column this week, Bezos addressed the declining public trust in journalism as his reason, with media now ranking lower in credibility than Congress. He argues that media organizations like voting systems must not only be accurate, but also perceived as credible. Recognizing a bias perception, Bezos says he believes that ending presidential endorsements is a step to restore trust, though it might not be sufficient alone. He clarified that his decision was purely internal, despite an unfortunate timing with Blue Origin's CEO meeting with Donald Trump before the decision, which had fueled skepticism. Bezos acknowledges his wealth can be seen as a conflict of interest, yet asserts his principled ownership since acquiring the Post in 2013 to counter growing misinformation from social media and podcasts. Hey, fuck you, Jeff. Bezos calls for innovations in journalism to regain widespread credibility, emphasizing the essential role of a trusted independent press in an era of increasingly dominated, fragmented media sources. Mr. Andrew Heaton, now a resident of the DC Metroplex.
The swamp.
The Post now joins the LA Times and the USA Today in not endorsing Harris. Should news organizations like them endorse candidates?
Yeah, they should, but probably not presidents. I think that there are value to endorsements. There is value to endorsements, but it comes from when I need somebody to do kind of basic research for me. So I find endorsements to be very useful on local issues and on state issues. When I was last registered in Oklahoma back in 2020, 4 years ago, I go through the ballot and I look at the various propositions and I look at the various candidates in there. And the one that I'm always flummoxed by is judges, because I don't know what you're running on as a judge. I don't know anything about any. I'm not sure how to even obtain knowledge about this particular person, because it's not like you run on I am going to be tough on crime as a judge or whatever. Like you don't have policies as a judge. So I found the editorial from the Daily Oklahoman to be very useful. The Daily Oklahoman's editorial that year went, hey, we've got 9 judges up for retention. I think the way it's done in Oklahoma is you either retain them or you oust them and fill in the seat. And they went, 3 of them are appointed by Democrats, 6 of them are appointed by Republicans, something like that. I don't remember. And they went, basically, they're all fine. We think that all of these judges are within the norm in terms of their rulings. They're all competent. There's really no reason to toss any of them out. And I went, hey, good enough for me. Good to know. So in a situation,
voted for all of them.
Yeah, and I voted for all of them. In a situation like that, where there's low information and the paper is doing actual grunt work and diligence to provide me with the tools necessary to do it, I think it can be useful. I feel the same way about a lot of propositions at local newspapers, particularly like in Austin, Texas, where you'll have Prop 42. Should we allow turtles to race during ukulele competitions or whatever the hell Austin's up to? Those can be very useful to me. I don't think that they're particularly useful for presidents, because I don't think anybody's actually swayed by them. Jeff Bezos is right about that. I don't think that the Washington Post's readership was sitting on the fence about Kamala Harris or Donald Trump. I certainly do not think that the LA Times readership was sitting on the fence. I don't think that either of those were going to make a difference. Where I think that he's making a misstep is believing that this will meaningfully do anything to restore confidence in the newspapers. I think it's entirely possible that Jeff Bezos or the leadership of the Times are afraid of reprisals from the incoming federal government, which by my light says more about the power of the federal government than it does about the newspapers. But I can't look into a crystal ball. I can't really see what they're seeing. What I can say is, from a consumer perspective, what I would really like that would restore my faith in media would be, instead of having an editorial every 4 years on who the 3 people running the newspaper have decided to endorse for president, have all of the people that do reporting and editorial just say who they're going to vote for. Because if I were reading the Washington Post and I saw that they had like a 30-70 split, even a 20-80 split, I would go, oh, okay, this is a publication that actually has some ideological diversity to it. That means that they're not going to have an echo chamber effect. There's not going to be homogeneity of thought. That's great. If it's 99-1 or 97-3, as recently happened with NPR when they did this, that does make me go, okay, even if everybody's trying their best, there's going to be bias here, because you can't have an organization that is 97% in agreement with itself that winds up being objective. So that's what I would recommend they do, is just come out and say, who are you supporting? And if it is really, really one-sided, maybe think about what that says about your publication and how you could have a more ideologically diverse group of people participating in it.
By the way, Bezos reportedly has given a mandate to his management to hire more conservatives. That is another part of this particular situation, that he has said
good
that they do need to hire more conservatives to be part of the working staff. Jen.
So, big picture, I'm not really sure that these endorsements are a good thing. And I know that I'm kind of a hypocrite in that, because I've chosen in my own job to tell people how I'm going to vote, because I just feel like it's impossible to not have bias. So I would rather just wear mine on my sleeve and let you know where I stand. And if you disagree with me, fine, but my facts are still facts. So to say that these publications shouldn't have these endorsements, I understand the hypocrisy there. But at the same time, there's supposed to be some kind of independence to these outlets. And so I've never been terribly comfortable with the endorsements. The thing that makes this icky to me is that all of these publications, the Washington Post, the LA Times, USA Today, we know for sure that the Washington Post's editorial board was going to endorse Kamala.
Shock.
Exactly. But like, and that's the thing. It would have been kind of a non-story. Like no one would have given a shit. But then the billionaire steps in and goes, at the last minute, no, you can't publish this. And that's the part that makes me get the icks, where it's like, it wasn't like after an election 2 years ago, they said, by the way, for this upcoming election, we've decided for journalistic reasons, we're not going to be endorsing anymore. Yeah. They did this at the last minute. And then the LA Times and USA Today just basically riding those coattails were like, oh, we're going to get out of piss.
Times happened before, but the USA Today happened after.
But basically these publications are afraid of pissing off Trump. And that's...
I don't know if that's true. How do we know that that's true?
I think that's entirely true. And that to me is concerned that the
report is with the LA Times is that the person didn't want to endorse because of Palestine. Because they didn't want to endorse Kamala because of that.
Well, and that's fair too. And that's why
I just think jumping to the idea that, they're scared of Trump. That's just, I don't see evidence to immediately assume that.
I think that's fucking obvious when they pulled the endorsement of Kamala right at the last minute. Also knowing that the Washington Post, owned by Bezos, Amazon has a bunch of, also owned by Bezos, has a ton of CIA contracts. Like, I think there are financial reasons for why they would not want to piss off Trump. And so it's the last minuteness of this that makes me extremely suspicious of the motivation.
Do we believe if Donald Trump becomes president of the United States that there's not going to be a reason for him to be pissed off at the Washington Post like every president in the history of American history? Everybody that has been in the White House has at some point in their administration been pissed off at the Washington Post for some reason. Okay. I don't think that you would be purchasing any kind of leeway by spiking an editorial.
But I don't think that Donald Trump is a normal human being, let alone president.
Yeah,
I think
he has more of a hair trigger.
Exactly. I think he's
more pissed off at the Post.
Exactly. He is more vindictive. So to have the Post as the Post, not just some writer for the Post saying we're endorsing Kamala, but to have the organization itself endorsing Kamala, which is what Bezos stepped in to stop. I think that he is a calculation here. I think if there was any other standard Republican, I do think the endorsements would still be happening. I think this is a Trump-centric decision, and I think it's pretty obvious.
I don't think that we have enough there to say.
It could well be, but I'm taking this more systemically. It very well could be. I think that there's. I don't disagree with anything Jen said about why Bezos, the Washington Post, Blue Origin might fear Donald Trump if he gets in for reprisal, and the guy does very much have a transactional, loyalty-based worldview, and he gets angry when people aren't loyal to him. That being said, though, to me, the bigger issue here is you have a presidency that is large enough that if a nasty person gets into it, that both billionaires and newspapers fear him. And that to me is an indictment of how big the presidency has gotten, that if somebody that you don't like gets in, that you have to pull your punches. So I would take this as evidence that maybe we should rein it in a bit.
Point well made. I would say that on the other side of this is a 50-50 election. So while the vibes might be tilting Trump, I don't think that anybody would be shocked if Kamala Harris wins on Tuesday. And this would be something that would be very much pissing off the incoming presidency. And the Democratic establishment is not without its enemies list. Talk to RFK Jr. about how quickly, if you piss off the orthodoxy of that party, that you can be excommunicated and punished for it. So
yeah, but the Democrats are weaklings. And that's kind of the problem with them. They don't stand up for any of their principles. Like, I think if you're going to fear anyone, you fear Trump.
I just think it's more complicated than that. Let me ask you guys a question. How do you believe these endorsements are done?
Oh, I have no idea.
I think that there's an editorial board consisting of the editor and 3 or 4 people that are probably like executive producers that kind of work there, but are vested with management of the company. And they sit down and take a vote, and then one of them writes it. So I think it probably boils down to 3 to 5 people, one of which is the senior editor. And I really doubt they do a straw poll of the actual editorial staff or the reporters.
Close.
I think it's a reflection of management, not a reflection of the paper itself.
Close. The editorial board has no connection to the actual working elements of the paper. They are deliberately firewalled off entirely. They are just a board, a council of elders that then writes opinions in the name of the newspaper.
That's weird.
There is no connection to reporters. There's no connection to editors. There's no connection to anybody who does things on a daily basis. Editorial boards for real reporters tend to be far more of a pain in the ass.
Yeah, I take back everything I said. I want to be on the editorial board for the Washington Post. Just pay me, and every 4 years, I'll smoke a pipe and sit there in the room.
No, but you do.
I think.
Yeah, no, but you do these things all the time. So let's say, for example, like the Washington Post editorial board says the city shouldn't fund a stadium. The sports reporter still has to go in and talk to the team that wants the stadium built. And now the team punishes the reporter because the editorial board did something that he has no say in at all whatsoever. This is not a reflection of ownership, and it's not a reflection of the actual rank and file. It'd be one thing if it was, like you said, a poll that was taken, so at least you could reflect the will of the people that are out there doing things. It'd be another thing if it were just Jeff Bezos personally saying, here's who I endorse, here's who I don't endorse. It's not. It is a firewalled off council of elders that in every situation that I've talked to for actual reporters are nothing but a bane of their existence because they put out things under their masthead that they have no control over and have to eat all the shit for.
Who appoints these people? The Federal Reserve Board of New York? How do you this seems like a very weird setup. How do you get into this?
I don't know. I mean, I think but my assumption is that every organization is different as to how their board is cycled through, but it is in general the same process. And I don't know how. I'm sure that there's some vestigial, this is like a vestigial tale of like a bygone era when, you know, the Pulitzer family, you know, decided that they needed X, Y, or Z. I think that there probably would be an interesting dive back to see why these boards exist the way that they do.
They all go into the basement of a Yale frat house and put on Rams heads.
No, they do. I've been so every paper that I've actually like physically been into, there is a separate wing that they just go and talk. And then they decide one person writes it. So you're right there, Heaton. They make their decision and then one person writes it.
Hey,
it's a great gig.
Bezos, I'm not a conservative, but I'm not a progressive. So if you're looking to expand the amount of people working for your rag, I would be really good. And also, you know what? I live in the area, so I could totally come in and do this. Now, that being said, if I don't get hired by the Washington Post, in that eventuality that I don't join their editorial board, this is weird. This is a very strange setup because it's like I read some
and nobody knows it. That's the other thing. Everybody's like so mad about this, and nobody knows how these editorials or how these endorsements are made.
I read some apoplectic response to this where some journalist, I think the New York Times, I can't remember, was talking about how the editorial the editorial endorsement is the soul of the newspaper, and like I hate to get like overly left-brained here, but the newspaper doesn't have so it's a bunch of individuals, and I am very curious to see how they all voted. I think that would be the best thing you could do is be straightforward on how everybody voted.
If they would endorse Kamala,
barring that, it's not like it doesn't have electoral votes. You don't have to speak with one voice at the newspaper, particularly when people in it are going to have dissenting opinions. There's no need for it.
But if you're going to have this thing that purports to speak for the entire newspaper, I just assumed that it was speaking for the entire newspaper. Everybody where the reporters who are actually out there learning things, know things, are expert in things. Like I assumed they had a role.
Nope.
That's
deliberately
ridiculous.
Firewalled off. Deliberately firewalled off.
Yeah, so we can scrap the whole. But they should have scrapped it months ago.
I agree with you. I think that at a certain point the
optics is bad.
Yeah, Bezos was spending too much time apparently partying with Katy Perry in France when all of this was happening. That's what he was up to.
What?
He's in his whole arc now. All the like billionaires that were like super lefty, all but Zuckerberg have like divorced their wives who have become gigantic Democratic mega donors.
Yeah.
Including Mackenzie Bezos. Or
I love
whatever
her
name is.
Yeah.
Scott Bezos. And now just become like jacked bros who are just living like super crazy lifestyles. Well, Bezos specifically, who now just looks like a super jacked pit bull.
And he does. He looks like a super villain.
The singer, not the animal.
Yeah, he looks like a villain.
Yeah.
And Elon is getting weirder and weirder looking. He somehow looks Japanese to me lately. Like, I don't know what's going on with his face.
That is a take. Of all the Elon takes that have floated around over the past
don't like
2
him,
months,
looks Japanese.
He
looks
Japanese.
He does.
Is a real doozy.
Looks a touch Okinawa. Listen.
Whatever he's doing with that plastic surgery, he just looks, different to me.
He got the biggest cheer aside from Trump at the MSG rally.
Oh my God, did you hear
love him.
His sad USA chant? Like he did a Howard Dean weird wail at the end there. It was the most awkward thing I've ever seen.
I think it was Mark Andreessen on Twitter called it the autist cry.
Yes, that's what it seems like. What a weird dude to be so central to all of our politics. And who's now like, if Trump wins, he's telling us that Elon's going to get to basically hack the government apart. Like what?
He says he can find
simulation
$2
are we
trillion
listening?
in savings.
Yeah, by just dismantling the government,
waste, fraud, and abuse of the federal government.
See, this I gotta say, this to me sounds like
Elon Musk.
putting Tony Stark in charge of efficiency. I actually kind of like that. I'm like, okay, I want to see what Tony Stark does. I'll hear his proposal.
No way. It would be one thing if Elon Musk didn't have like billions of dollars worth of contracts with the government. So it's like, oh, here's this guy that's getting government contracts who's going to go and dismantle all the regulators. It's just like the conflict of interest is so huge that I can't believe we're even entertaining the idea of this. And on top of it, he's a weirdo. So yeah.
As opposed to all the other normal people involved in our federal government.
I know, but like Elon's a next level weirdo. You have to admit that.
Yeah, but he's a weirdo that invents a rocket that can bring us to Mars.
His ego is so large that he is now offering people his sperm because he thinks that we need to have more babies and they should all be related to him.
He's certainly done that. I think every woman he meets, he offers a surrogacy. Yeah.
Yeah, and then he just abandons those children.
Jen, I'm with you on
his own children hate him.
Trump gets elected, there should be some sort of conflict of interest barrier there. I don't disagree on that. Like if he's brought on as efficiency czar or whatever, he should have to like step down and sell a stock in any companies that are being regulated. I think that's a fairly self-evident a precaution that I would agree with you on. But in terms of him being weird, though, I've got a theory. The people that are really, really paradigm-changing geniuses tend to be paradigm changing people because they're unencumbered by whatever the world is as it is. Like
shame.
Yeah. But that's one of the things, right? Is that like Steve Jobs goes into the computer market and they go, well, this is how things are done. And he goes, fuck it. That's not how I'm going to do it. And then he beats him. He changes the whole thing. We get iPods, we get Macs, and that's awesome. And we all like that. But the exact same personality type that is unencumbered by common sense and unencumbered by just how things work is also completely unencumbered by social mores. So they tend to be assholes. They tend to be really egotistical assholes. And I think that that's just probably part of the mix.
Look, also, people hate Elon Musk because he talks a lot and because he's picked a political side. If you just take everything that Elon Musk did, up to and including offering to try to cut $2 trillion out of the federal government, but he never talked and he didn't outwardly pick a political side and he made that offer to both candidates, he would be far more popular than he is right now.
I disagree. There are so many people that, I mean, Andrew just said it like, oh, Elon Musk is such a genius. And like, there is a cult around Elon Musk that has existed for so long. And I am on the air going back a decade saying, I don't like this man. I think he does things half-assed. I think that he doesn't pick a thing and do it well. He does a whole bunch of things when there's a bunch of people without fingers right now that can testify that because they bought his Cybertrucks. Like, I think he's dangerous, quite frankly. I think he puts technologies onto our roads that aren't ready. And now he's going to try and get involved in our government in a way that I think is going to be dangerous to a lot of people. Like, you can't just go in there and hack the government to pieces willy-nilly. And that seems to be what his plan is. If he's just like, oh yeah, we'll just stop spending this $2 trillion. Like, he's reckless in so many ways.
You don't think that there's waste, fraud, and abuse in the federal government?
I do, but I don't think Elon Musk is the person that should be going in there. He has no expertise in our government. And he's, like I said, reckless. He likes to go in and break things. And like, he doesn't follow the rules. He just does things like act first, apologize, maybe pay the fine. He's not someone that I trust to be the person to go in with a scalpel and like decide what's worthy and what's not. I mean, when it comes to regulations, these regulations were put in place for a reason. There was some kind of harm that was done. And like, we definitely have probably, I hate talking about regulations in more or less than we need because this isn't like a cup of water. I think we need to have smart regulations. And like, I know that there are regulations upon regulations. We need to fine tune things. Elon Musk is not the person I trust to do that, especially because he is one of the beneficiaries of so much government money. So
I think we might be conflating a few things too. I mean, beyond like hacking the regulatory state is one thing that I think would be more of an executive branch thing. What he's talking about is like literally just entire swaths of the government that have money dumping into it that is just not being spent or
he can't do
wasted.
that.
Yeah.
Like no matter what.
So
that's
he is
Congress.
identifying, but he is identifying these things and saying either to report back to the heads of these departments that are going to be very much given mandates to slim down. Hey, cut this, cut this, cut this.
Exactly.
That's more what he's looking for. But
I don't trust him.
But not the regulatory. The regulatory state is
I
kind
would
of another
love to hear his proposals
I don't think it
on
is.
that. But for anybody afraid of Elon Musk, keep in mind nobody works for Donald Trump for more than 3 months. So like, whereas I like the idea of Elon Musk being in the White House, I think he would be there for a month and a half and then say fuck it and take off. I don't see this.
That's what happened in 2016. He was a part of a panel.
Yeah,
and
he was
Elon
there
left.
for a month and a half.
Yeah.
And
Well, like I said, he
didn't stick around.
half-asses everything. So that would
But
be.
that being said, I don't. You could convince me that he is like I have friends that have said that it's all a bunch of fraudulent stuff boiling down to government contracts, and I would need to look into that more. Maybe you could convince me of that. But from where I'm at, I think that probably more than anybody else in the last 40 years, he's propelled space technology forward, and more than anybody else in terms of electric cars, which are a laudable goal. He's done an amazing job. So
He's
like
standing on the
net
shoulders
balance.
of giants with the space program. He's standing on the shoulders of giants and saying that I'm the tallest man who's ever lived. Like he could not be doing anything he's doing with SpaceX without using the technology developed by NASA and the incredibly generous insurance program that the government has for private companies like his. For when his rockets blow up, like we pay the costs for pretty much all of the fuck ups. So this is what I'm saying. Like he is the beneficiary of a ton of government largesse. And it's like, you can either be a titan of the private sector or you can be in government, but you can't have this guy be both because then he's regulator and regulated. And that's fucked up.
Absolutely be a barrier. I don't disagree with that at all. All I'm saying is in terms of innovations in space and electric cars, he seems to me to be like overwhelmingly a net positive in terms of just contributions to both climate change and space technology.
Well,
do you
even
think
with
that
electric
we'd be
cars,
where we are with electric cars or space without those two companies?
I think he was a pioneer in that, but just the way that, like, if there is a Tesla charger out there, I can't use it. Like he hasn't opened up that technology. So it's like he made it. And at the time it made sense. It was like, if you buy a Tesla, then we're going to have these charging stations for you. But as things have progressed and there are different kinds of cars out there, he hasn't helped. That's what the Inflation Reduction Act was doing. And one of the reasons that it's taking so goddamn long for some of these chargers to be built is that they gave Tesla the contract and then Elon just like, well, fuck it. So and then they had to find a new contract. So it slowed down the whole thing because they trusted Elon Musk. Like this guy, he's a menace, man. And so, yes, there were things that he gets credited for bringing us forward on. But we also have to keep in mind that the technologies that we give him sole credit for, there are thousands of people that work for him.
Who gives him sole credit?
Oh, even in this conversation, we talk about how Elon is doing the space program and Tesla and like all these things.
He's
like
the CEO, or he's not the CEO, but he is the founder of those. Whatever. He is a leader of those companies. He has been CEO at pivotal points.
And I think as CEO, he gets more credit than he deserves for these technologies. He's not the genius who's inventing all of them. He's hiring the geniuses who are inventing all of them.
Catalyzing it, though.
There is a difference.
Steve Jobs or
I think
Bill
that's just
Gates.
assumed.
I don't think it's that assumed. People talk about Elon Musk as if he is this super genius. I'm like, my God. I think he's a shitty businessman, like just
I don't think
morally.
Being a mover shaker is the same thing as being a scientist. Steve Jobs wasn't the guy that was putting the circuits together. He was the guy that got all the people making the circuits together. But that's still a very important part of the innovation process, is having the person that can catalyze all of it. So I
get. And that's my bigger concern is as CEO, he's the business guy behind this. He's doing the hiring, bringing the people together, which is why having him step into a regulator role concerns me so much.
I'm not.
And that's what Trump is promising.
This would be so much different if he were like backing Kamala.
No, it wouldn't.
Yes, it would.
No, you can ask. Oh my God, there is so much tape of me talking about Elon Musk going back years. I do not like this man. I think he's a menace to our society, and I don't want him working for Kamala anymore. In fact, I would be railing against Kamala if she picked him to like chop the government apart. Like, no, I do not think that being good in the private sector and being able to weasel your way around regulations makes you qualified to then be in charge of regulations. Like, so much of what he has done, he's accomplished by getting around the rules. So I don't trust him as regulator, and I don't give a shit who's going to appoint him. He doesn't belong in that role.
Okay.
So there you go.
Okay. I'll tell you, man, Elon Musk is a paragraph for people. He is not 2 words.
Well, and people ruined Twitter.
It was so great before him. I really enjoyed it prior to him being an integral part. Such a good
It's definitely like a right-wing thing now. That is for sure.
Well, I just can't get tweets that I haven't already seen. Like, I'll sign in 8 hours after the last time and see the same exact tweets. Like, he broke the thing. So it just...
I have not had that problem.
Oh, I have it all. It makes me... I don't know how to...
Sounds like user error. Patreon.com/we're not wrong. We're going to be talking about a Timothy Chalamet lookalike contest because we've got 2 politics topics in the main show as we are barreling toward election day. But if you want a little palate cleanser, last week we talked about Building 7. Heaton, you left for
I missed that. I'm sad.
One Patreon episode and we got into Building 7.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, in this Patreon episode, we have an email from somebody who works at the new Building 7.
Oh my God, I love it.
But we'll also be talking about this Timothy Chalamet thing and then wherever that leads us. Patreon.com/we're not wrong. And also apologies for people who did not get the audio version, the podcast version from Patreon on time. Patreon, which has been at the top of my Christmas card list recently, decided to have a new podcast feature. So if anybody's putting out bonus stuff on Patreon or anything on Patreon, make sure you use their podcast feature, not the audio feature that you've been using for years. Because if you are putting things out on audio and not podcast, your podcast people are not getting it.
Are you serious?
That's what we found out last week.
This is really good to know. Thank you.
Fucking Patreon. I don't want to deal with migrating my audience, but God, they make things so difficult.
Let's talk about Tony Hinchcliffe, shall we? Comedian and podcast host Hinchcliffe defended his controversial jokes about Puerto Rico made at Donald Trump's New York City rally at Madison Square Garden on Sunday, responding to criticism from figures like Representatives Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Minnesota Governor and Vice Presidential nominee Tim Walz. Hinchcliffe claimed his jokes, which also included remarks on Jews, Black Americans, Latinos, were taken out of context and meant to mock everyone. If you have not seen the clip, Hinchcliffe said, a lot of things are going on. There's a floating pile of garbage in the ocean. Pause for effect. I think they call it Puerto Rico. The clip circulating captured that joke, and then Ocasio-Cortez and Walz, who were streaming playing video games on Twitch, because this is a very 2024 story, were the first to react to it that got viral status.
Big mad.
In response to the controversy, Trump campaign advisor Danielle Alvarez stated that Hinchcliffe's comments did not reflect Trump or his campaign's views. The backlash underscored the heightened sensitivity around racially charged jokes, especially in a political setting. And then last night, after we had sent out our prep sheet, Joe Biden decided to comment on Tony Hinchcliffe's comments, but he said that the only garbage he sees are Trump's supporters. He then walked that
This
back.
is new to me. Wait, so he was like, you know what would be great? Let's do a basket of deplorables moment before. This seems like a good call. I'm going to do this.
Right as Kamala was on stage delivering her final pitch to voters at the Ellipse. So working in, tight consistency. Jen, you're a fan of this Hinchcliffe bigot. Defend yourself.
Oh my God, is that really the question?
Yes.
I need to read these things ahead of time, don't I? Oh man. I am a fan of Tony Hinchcliffe and have been for a very long time. In fact, I took you guys to see him.
Yeah. At his first stadium show here in Austin, Texas, where he lives. Yeah. And that's where Kill Tony is based out of now.
It is now, but yeah. I went to Kill Tony the first time when it was in the belly room of the Comedy Store. And if you guys don't know the Comedy Store, the belly room has maybe 30 seats in it. It was tiny and it wasn't even full. So it's like, I've been watching that show since the beginning, and like the whole point of Kill Tony.
Yeah, explain the format.
Yeah, so Kill Tony, it's genius. So it's for up and coming comics. So the way it works is you have Tony Hinchcliffe and Brian Redband. They're on every single show. And then they generally have 2 other professional comics that are kind of the panel. And so you have these upcoming comics who want a chance to get feedback from these professionals. And so they all put their names in a bucket, and Tony will pick names out of the bucket. Each one of these comics goes up. They get a minute, and then they get feedback. And by feedback, I mean, most of the time they get roasted by by the pros. Now, some of these people, though, like there are, Ally McCluskey is one of them. She started as a Kill Tony person, and then she became a regular, and now she has a full-blown career. So they actually do help comics. Yep. Like some of their feedback is really, really good.
I fell into a TikTok hole of Casey Rocket.
Oh,
who is a regular and very funny.
Yeah, there's some very funny people. And but basically what Tony is brilliant at is roasting people. And I've also seen him probably 5 or 6 times do his stand-up.
Yeah.
And he's brilliant at crowd work. Like one of the funniest things I've ever seen in my whole life was at the San Francisco Punchline. And there was this family of wasps sitting right in the middle of the club. And Tony picked them out of the crowd and just analyzed what the situation was. So it's like he realized that the girl that was sitting there was the daughter, and the guy was not the son. It was the son that the father wished he had, because they both had sweatshirts wrapped around their shoulders.
Gotcha.
And he just ripped this family to shreds. And it was one of the funniest, like we were all crying, laughing, and like he will do this to anyone. And so it doesn't surprise me that Tony Hinchcliffe does his act at the rally when he's asked to do stand up at the rally. His act is very much, I mean, you can call it racist if you want to. I don't think there's any maliciousness there. He just points out the differences between people.
It's racially based. It is of a bygone era level of picking out differences we have in society. This is something that was far more a part of mainstream America in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, where white people be driving, black people be driving kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But at its best, at its roast best, you have like a Don Rickles level.
Do you guys know Greg Turkington? Are you familiar with him?
No.
Greg Turkington did, I can't remember the name of his character. He had a character that he would do for years that was this very like kind of losery looking guy, like slicked hair, but he would come out and go, "Hey, how's everybody doing? Where are the Jews?" And then all the Jewish people would laugh. They'd be like, "Let's hear it for the blacks." And would just go around and just like note all of the races really enthusiastically, but in a way that would feel weird now.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Tony comes from a very black community. So he was a white kid in a black community. And so he has a way of talking to black people and with black people just so comfortably that it's pretty fun to watch. And so this is the comic that he is. I'm not surprised by the set. It wasn't his best set. I did watch the whole 12 minutes, but context is everything, right? So it's like he's making these particular jokes. Like, first of all, he was invited. So whoever invited Tony Hinchcliffe had to know exactly who he is.
They apparently edited out of his set
the C word,
calling Kamala Harris a cunt.
Which, by the way, I think might have been brilliant on his part, because like if you're doing stand up and someone's like I've done this with shows before where I'm doing a sketch or something and they're like, "We really can't do this one bit," and I'm like, "But I do get to say cunt, right?" And they're like, "No."
Yeah.
And then you just put the word cunt in 3 or 4 times and argue with them. You're like, "Actually, though, cunt makes a lot of sense right here. It would be very funny." And eventually they go, "You can't do it, but we'll let you keep the other thing you wanted." You're like, "Great.
Yeah.
I did it."
Yeah. And the jokes, like, I mean, Andrew, as a comic, you work on the same jokes over and over again. He wasn't going to have a brand new set list when he was invited to do this rally just a couple of days ago. So he did his act, but he was invited to do his act. And I just think that it's not an appropriate act for a political rally.
It certainly isn't. And this is where I can come in, because I have been to many Trump rallies to cover them. The difference between a comic, a stand-up comedy place, a club, or Kill Tony or something like that, and a political rally, especially a Trump rally, is that there is an earnestness to a Trump rally. The people that are there have often waited many hours in line outside, sometimes in harsh conditions. They feel this is a lot more like baseball fans going to Cooperstown. There is a moment that they want to be there for. It does not have the suspension of, I'm going to willfully put my guard down and laugh at these jokes. Whether or not people thought that this one was funny is up to their own taste. But I will say that the Trump campaign recently, over the last 2 weeks, is very confident. I don't think that anybody could say that they're not confident, but they have been very loose about who they are giving microphones at their rallies. They gave Antonio Brown a live microphone in Latrobe 2 weeks ago.
Wait, Antonio Brown, like crazy in the head football player one?
Yes. Cracker of the day on Twitter. Antonio Brown, CTESPN. This is his persona now. Like, they gave him a live microphone at the one that wound up becoming famous because of Arnold Palmer's penis.
Wow.
And then
risky.
They give Tony Hinchcliffe a mic, and they have Tony Hinchcliffe do Tony Hinchcliffe things, which, shock and surprise, gets turned into the hate rally at Madison Square Garden. Heaton, what do you think?
So I also have experience with this. First of all, I didn't think it was a particularly good set, but it's because he was doing a weird hybrid speech / stand-up. And I can say this with great authority because that is exactly what I do mostly these days. As a think tank or political action committee will call me and go, hey, we would love to have you come do stand-up. And I'll go, well, do you want me to do stand-up or do you want me to do a speech? And they'll go, well, what's your preference? And I will go, hardcore speech. Here's why. Yes. If you tell everybody that I'm doing a speech and then I do my stand-up anyway, it blows it out of the water. The expectation's very low for a funny speech. And on top of that, I can use my notes. And on top of that, if I decide I want to talk about something and not have a punchline for 3 minutes, I'm at liberty to do so. So I will give funny speeches that are 80 to 90% stand-up. And that's what he was doing. I didn't think it was very good. I didn't think he pulled it off. And that he was kind of giving a speech, but he wasn't, I don't know. I never felt that he got into the stand-up cadence. He was doing jokes, but they were kind of slow and kind of weird. So I wasn't super impressed with it. The overall ire, though, I'm with Jen on this in that I don't think he is coming in as Tony Hinchcliffe, senior senator from Illinois, to give his policy preferences. Like he is a comedian, so I think that the context and the intent matter, and bringing in what appears to me to be gay Don Rickles is going to have a different attitude and response to it. The thing that I'm actually most interested in here, Justin and Jen, is why people have fixated on the Puerto Rico comment. Because as you mentioned earlier, Justin, there were there was literally a joke about black people and watermelons.
Carving watermelons. Yeah.
Any other
directed at one of his friends, but
Yeah, but at the same time, though, I have to say, the headlines have been that I have seen have been going overboard and trying to associate everybody with this. So rather than saying comedian at Trump rally makes joke about Puerto Rico, which is the most accurate way you could describe this phenomenon, Trump rally, Puerto Rico is island of floating garbage. And then they'll figure out a way to kind of loop in every single speaker to this Puerto Rican comment so that it sounds like a racist hate rally.
Yeah.
Now, if they're already going to do that, I'm curious as to why they went with Puerto Ricans. And my theory is that somebody looked at the data and went, well, there's about 500,000 Puerto Ricans in Pennsylvania. That's a swing state. Let's see if we can piss them off. As opposed to why this didn't happen with black voters or Jewish voters or something like that. So I think that this is somewhat intentionally being exacerbated at this time. And I'll add that, I didn't think it was a particularly good set. I laughed once. There was a joke that made me laugh. The rest of it, I was like, I'm not really blown away by this. But the way to get me to really get my bristles up is not to have Tim Walz and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez come out and say that this was really offensive and big. I mean, to literally have politicians come out and say that a comedian said something offensive and we shouldn't laugh at it is minus 5 points for your team. That was not the way to do it for me. So I did not share in the ire and pearl clutching that happened here.
So I think that there's Hinchcliffe did fuck up in that there was a way that he could have done that set and it would have been totally fine. But he would have had to get up there and say, "Hi, I'm Tony Hinchcliffe. I'm a stand-up comedian. For the last 4 years and really the last 12 years, I found that my liberal friends have become humorless. I think that the Democratic Party has become the fun police. Would you guys mind if I did some jokes?" And then if he did literally there, at the very least, it's not just like, "Oh, I'm being earnest. I'm standing up here and I'm trying to do a thing."
Well, he did say a few times, like, "I'm a comic." Like he did try to pull the whole like, just jokes.
But you have to set it up from the beginning and then do a bit. And then to be totally honest, what he should have, if he had a handheld, he should have actually like physically looked different than some of the other speakers that were behind the podium. He didn't do
like
it.
Hulk Hogan. Hulk Hogan did a good job of. I never doubted that Hulk Hogan was a wrestler. I didn't think he came out as like an insurance claims adjuster.
Yes, although he had a hard time. He didn't pre-cut his shirt. He had a hard time with that, which is a little embarrassing for the Hulkster. But
I'll add from a comic perspective. Like when I go do group events, one of the first questions. I mean, I'll ask very basic stuff. How long do you want me to talk for? Who's going to be in the audience? And then I'll go, what's the acceptable level of envelope pushing here? Can I swear? And what everybody ends up, every fucking everybody that's ever booked me goes, "We're a pretty fun group. You don't have to worry about it too much." Then I go, "Yeah, okay, so I can say the F word." And they're like, "No, probably not." Because everybody thinks they've got a great sense of humor and they're a ribald rascal on the edge. Every fucking person in America thinks that. So you go, "Okay, what can I do?" And then eventually I go, "Okay, would it be fair to say that this is like stuff that I would feel comfortable doing in front of my grandmother?" And they're like, "Yeah, that would be about right." And you're like, "Okay, so this is like a church crowd. That's fine. I don't like as a comedian, I don't have to swear. Like it's not required to do my set and I can pull back on all of that." So I'm kind of surprised that this is the set he ended up going with, that he either didn't lean into it.
Well, this is his comedy. That's the thing.
It's what he does.
This is what he does. Like those jokes, that Puerto Rico joke. When I heard it, I was like, I think I've heard him say this before.
Yeah. Okay. I like fair, but I guess what I mean is like the joke about Trump getting shot in the ear was like, that was okay. I'm going to give that like 3 out of 10. Like that was a new one. That wasn't something that was in an album anywhere. So he's going back and forth between, and then he's talking about like free speech and, he sleeps right, endorsing the right president or whatever. So he's oscillating between speech and comedy. And that's where he's getting into trouble in my mind. Like if he'd said the humorless thing and he'd said, I'm an insult comedian and I've decided to go with a team that can take a joke and can give jokes. And can I give you an example right now? And then just like litanize 10 of them. And then into the last one with making fun of Trump or something.
Every time that there was get a jail free card, Tony, point to the media, say, "Oh my God, look at them. Look at how offended they are." The crowd immediately, you could say the most offensive thing possible and then point to the media and say, "Wow, they're the ones that are offended." And you would have immediately had the crowd on your side because they love whenever the libs are owned.
But I also think that the booking of Tony and the set list, I think that's part of the fundamental misunderstanding of MAGA that I had until I went to the RNC.
Yeah.
Because I think they have this reputation that's been given to them largely by the media and by people who are disingenuous as a bunch of racists, right? They're not. Like I met quite a few church-going ladies that if I dropped the F word in front of them would have been very offended. Like it's a group of people that there is a community there. They enjoy the community. They enjoy being together. And so I just don't think those jokes were going to land. I think that it's interesting the assumptions that were made by both picking Tony and the jokes that he decided to go with. I think there was an assumption that those are going to land for some pretty shitty reasons. And it's almost kind of good that they didn't. I don't know. But going back to Andrew's point, I think you're dead on balls why they're picking on the Puerto Rican thing, because I saw J-Lo retweet some woman I've never heard of, but she was a very angry Puerto Rican woman. And she was going down the list of swing states and saying, "We Puerto Ricans, we vote and we have this many numbers in this state and this many numbers in this state. Like you've gone and fucked up now, Donald Trump." And I think that's exactly why they pulled that one out of the hat. They
certainly activated a thing that was probably going to be activated this week anyway, which is their like Puerto Rican deployment of Mark Anthony, Jennifer Lopez, Bad Bunny, a lot of people that are very, very famous Puerto Rican Democratic supporters. So this was probably just the handle that they wanted to use to beat him. I think this is also the cleanest quote because it was, it wasn't referring to anybody else. It was just a very
the watermelon
clean
one would have been a little bit harder to take out of
to parse. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, in the garbage one, like, I don't know how many people had actually been to Puerto Rico. I've been to Puerto Rico, and one of the things that angered me the most about it is the litter bug culture there. Like, there really is.
All right, yeah.
No, hold on. Like, I know.
Keep going, Jen. Keep going.
Hold on. There is a problem with trash there. There is too much. They don't know what to do with it. That is what Tony said he was intending to do. He wasn't calling the people garbage.
Trash, yeah.
And if you listen to the joke, he is calling the island itself a floating island of trash. He's not saying that these people are trash, which is why when you take what Biden fucking said, what Biden did was actually worse. Like, Biden did the thing that they were.
For the importance of the Kill Tony podcast, Joe Biden is the sitting president of the United States of America.
I know.
Which tends to come with a little bit more esteem much as we do love and respect Kill Tony.
These are the lamest October surprises in living memory, because America blew its load hardcore over the summer.
October ain't over yet.
Where the president's brains leaked out his ears, and then the other president got shot in the head. Like, we had so much shit this summer that the October surprises are pathetic. The October surprises are Beyonce endorsed Kamala but didn't sing. That's what I'm seeing on.
By the way,
Twitter.
did you see Jon Stewart's comment on the Hinchcliffe thing?
No. What did he say?
So Jon Stewart, which, to be fair, a long line of traditions of stand-up comedians folding in and protecting the ranks of stand-up comedians when stand-up comedians do something that isn't positive. As Dave Chappelle once said, he knew that he was more comedian than black person when he watched the Kramer tape of him screaming the N-word and said, "Yeah, bad night, Michael. Go out there and get him tomorrow." Jon Stewart basically said like, oh, look, this is what he does. He played a bunch of clips from Hinchcliffe's set at the Tom Brady roast, said that this was hilarious, and then said, yeah, you brought an insult comic out to a political rally and he told insult jokes. If they were to ask him to not tell insult jokes, it would be as dumb as having Beyonce at a rally and not having her.
Yeah, that's so true. But it's amazing to watch all these liberals screaming about how angry they are about this. And then their president goes and does the thing that they're accusing Tony of having. But you
see, Jen, though, the Puerto Rican people are a blightless minority group who's being unfairly picked on by racists, whereas the Trump supporters are garbage people. He's just saying what everybody's thinking. So why would we say anything about Biden saying that they're? I mean, they are. I was watching some MSNBC clips, guys. I don't know if you know this, but this is actually really serious. Did you know that Madison Square Gardens hosted a Nazi rally 46 years ago in the very same place? They're fucking Nazis. Look,
I know.
You can see they're cheering. There are white people. There's also a lot of Jews. Literal Nazis. So anyway, I don't think that they're reacting to that as hard because a lot of them believe it.
Oh no. I don't think any of them are all that offended. I really don't.
Well, I mean, the Kamala Harris campaign, or Kamala Harris walked it back today in defense of the White House, or at least the spin that they have tried to put out there over the last 24 hours. In the official transcript that they have proffered to journalists, they have put a apostrophe in supporters. So it's supporter possessive. So it's Tony Hinchcliffe's stuff. Now, Biden doesn't put anything after the possessive.
Yeah, possessing of what?
Exactly.
This is the fucking. I really want to buy a beer.
It is Spin Hall of Fame. No, come on. Look, there's an apostrophe there. But meanwhile, you play the clip and it's just saying the only garbage I see is his supporters.
I would
love to meet the 28-year-old hotshot who was, at 11 p.m. at night in the DNC and went, I know what we'll do. We'll add an apostrophe to the word supporters in the official Journal of Record. That will solve this problem.
So ridiculous. What is
the only thing that this really does, if you're going to look at it tactically, is that the Harris campaign successfully made a news story that was not a Republican sold out Madison Square Garden with a week to go before the election, which is genuinely impressive. I can't think of another Republican nominee that could have done that readily, easily.
Or would have tried.
Or even would have tried.
Yeah.
Particularly, like, I got to say that it is a really weird thing to do. New York's not a swing state. So, like, I'm surprised that they were doing any time there at all this close to the election. That is either hubristic or very confident.
The best thing that you could say, number one, they're in their bag right now. They are very confident. He is very confident. The best thing that you could squint and say is that doing rallies in Coachella and Madison Square Garden could actually have some kind of effect on the House races.
Yeah.
Because those are areas where contested House races will be decided. But that would assume that Donald Trump gives a shit about the Republican Party, which I think might be incidental. But the Democrats were able to muddy up that, which is genuinely impressive. And then now the Republicans are able to muddy up Kamala Harris putting 70,000 people in Washington, D.C. to hear her speak. And now they have successfully muddied that up with Joe Biden's garbage comments. So
all he had to do was say nothing.
Yeah.
That's all he had to do. It was such an easy layup.
He was mad, reportedly, that he wasn't on stage.
Ugh.
He wanted to be on stage with Kamala.
Wasn't it past his night time anyway?
Also, I don't know, from the Kamala Harris campaign, why, when you're doing your best to make yourself an insurgent candidate, why would you do your closing speech with the White House behind you to remind everybody that you are currently the government? If your goal is to say, no, I'm a totally new thing. We're going to turn the page. We're not going back.
That doesn't seem to be the campaign that she's running.
Nobody knows the campaign that she's running.
I mean, I guess that's true, but I don't see any like insurgent candidate out of her.
Oh no, yeah, no, she's new. She's new. She's
new. She's establishment. She's outsider. She's insider. She's whatever she needs you to be. It's a quantum candidate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Schrodinger's candidate.
I mean, I understand the ellipse because what she's trying to do is be like, this was the scene of January 6th. Like that was the.
Yeah. I mean, that was that. But also it's like, I was texting another politics group chat that I have where it was like, her speech was January 6th, economy, housing, border, then abortion. Where if I were writing her speech, it would be abortion, economy, abortion.
Yeah.
Like if I were writing it, it'd be all housing. And that's why I have not been invited to speak at Madison Square Garden or the Democratic campaign.
Yeah.
The zoning candidate. That's the one that fires people up.
Mm-hmm.
Garbage.
Housing justice and homelessness. This is what the Whig Party comes to solve.
Andrew, Justin just called you garbage. Don't you want to freak out?
You're a garbage person.
How dare you? And might I add that you are somehow Nazis?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think our friend Jeff Maurer wrote a very interesting and funny piece in Substack this week where he was talking about liberal overreaction to stuff that he's like, look, guys, there is one wolf. We do not need to be screaming about many wolves. Like you are distracting people from the fact that there is a wolf that we need to be drawing attention to. If you are talking about how there's 50 wolves and they have lasers coming out of their eyes and they are going to give you AIDS if they bite you, you are doing the service of the people that want to make this wolf seem like not a problem. Which I think from a liberal perspective,
yeah. Well,
can
I add on to that a little bit? We like following this election. Can we just all agree to retire the word fascist because it hasn't gotten thrown around as much this time as 2016, but it's getting thrown around
lately.
again.
It's constant.
It's back in a big way.
It is now I think it is a counterproductive word at this point. It has been so stretched and deprived of any actual essence or meaning that it's just. Whatever reality actually was reflected by that word is gone, and it's now muddying the waters. We need to be more specific in what we're talking about. Just let that word go away because I don't think it's helping anybody.
Well, I said this on The Blaze. I was on The Blaze News Tonight this week that I also think fascist is just not an efficacious word for reaching people that aren't angry liberals. It is a Frasier word. It would be a word that Frasier and Niles would talk about, and then they would cut to the dad, and he'd fart and he'd change the channel to football because it's alienating. People don't know if you just say you're a fascist, you're a Nazi. it goes over most people's heads because it just sounds like an outraged liberal spinning themselves up. If you explain what the problems are in a kitchen table way, it's a different story. And I think that's the problem, is that the word fascist literally reaches only one group, angry liberals, and they're voting for Kamala anyway.
Yeah. On top of on the cry wolf thing, like Gerald Ford and Mitt Romney got called a fascist, and it's like, look, Gerald Ford and Mitt Romney weren't called. This is just I agree with everything you're saying. I don't think it's a useful. I have so many criticisms of Donald Trump. I have so many criticisms of MAGA and the populist conservative movement and the nativists and everything else. And like, I can articulate them without having to use a broad label that just pisses people off and doesn't do anything.
Yeah. We're not wrongpod@gmail.com. You are all garbage. We're not wrongpod@gmail.com.
Now he's going to ask you for money.
You're so garbage. You're only happy when it rains.
Oh, I see what you did there.
Thank you.
Good song.
I didn't get that.
Nor were you meant to. Two Nutty Ideas writes, if Trump wins, he will surround himself with such a pit of vipers that shortly after inauguration, they will invoke the 25th Amendment and make Vance president. And two, Biden will pardon Hunter and commute his sentence. Doesn't matter that he said that he wouldn't.
Yes, of course he will.
Two is 100% going to happen.
Yeah.
You think so?
Oh, fuck yeah. If there's one thing we know about the Bidens is that they look out for their own. They will always look out for the Bidens.
Every president, the last day they were in office, pardons like 26 of their buddies that would have been political suicide if they did it before the election.
Yes.
This happens every time and has every president of my lifetime. So yes, that's going to happen for sure.
That'll be an epic freak out.
Well, the good news is he'll be able to hide it under the cloud of, if Trump wins, then everybody will be freaking out about that. Can we knock it off with the 25th Amendment? For now, I mean, for the love of God, we had to do 3 years of the 25th Amendment stuff with Trump, and then nobody took it seriously when Joe Biden's brains were like leaking out of his nose.
He's still fucking president.
I mean, it's like, come on. Like, look, either we're going to take the 25th Amendment seriously or we're just going to scream about it with Trump. Like, can we knock it off with that? And also, I saw somebody in my Substack chat that was like, oh, Peter Thiel, he's going to usher in the Christian, Handmaid's Tale universe by 25th Amendmenting Trump. It's like, gay VC blood boy Peter Thiel. Like, I mean, again, if Donald Trump is a literal Bible villain, Peter Thiel is like the bigger boss of the Bible villain. So I don't know. I don't know if he is the Christian nationalist, but who knows? Second thoughts about listening to Rogan and Trump. I've been aboard the free trade bandwagon for a long time, and I still am. But I got to admit, as much as I hate Trump, and boy do I, listening to Trump and Rogan talk about tariffs made me double back and check my priors on the pros and cons of free trade. I realized that I know the benefits of cheaper goods and easing global tensions, but then I wondered, when is the point if free trade can go too far? A quick Google search of the biggest cons of American free trade are losing jobs to other countries, lower quality goods, and rocket fueling the rise of exploitation of workers in developing countries. If we had the economic activity of Switzerland, I doubt our money would have such a negative impact. But being the world's largest economy, are we the bad guys by going so hard with free trade?
Can I field this one before I struck out?
He's not even done reading it, Andrew.
Yeah. Sorry. Go on, Justin.
Two more sentences. Are we the reason that 1 billion people are in poverty, are getting exploited to make less than $1 a day and are barely able to get by? To snap together a few more iPads for those Americans. Andrew Heaton.
Yes. Respectfully, I do not think you know the pros and cons of free trade, listener. The main benefit to free trade is that it's been the biggest anti-poverty measure in the last 1,000 years. And I know that sounds like a very big claim, but it's true. When you go back and look at 1950, the year that my mom was born, 70% of the world's population lived in extreme poverty on less than $2 a day. And over the last 70 years, that number has fallen down to 9%, despite the fact that global population has, quadrupled. So there's been this crazy, insane reduction in awful, extreme poverty that is principally attributable to trade between these developed countries and these developing countries, where places that are absolutely mired and stricken in poverty don't have anything other than cheap labor. and they end up making things or selling goods and services to the developed countries that bring them money, bring them technology, and it builds them up. This is a very widespread consensus opinion of economists that trade has been an integral part of this massive reduction. Again, more people reduced from extreme poverty in the last 70 years than the last 4,000 years. It's incredible. And that's the principal benefit to free trade. The idea that we are exploiting people, I think, misunderstands what's happening here, because it presumes that there's some other option that is being deprived of them by virtue of trade. So if you've got a situation where the options are starving to death, working for less than $2 a day, or working for what you consider an exploitative salary of $2 an hour or something like that, the best option is still working for the $2 an hour. And so thinking that if you get rid of the trade and remove that option from them, that it's going to be better is trying to create good options by eliminating the worst or the best worst option. It's not how it's working. In terms of the other con of Americans' jobs being exported, some amount of jobs are being exported, but on net, no. On net, where the jobs are going is automation and productivity. If you go back to 1900, like 60 to 80% of the American workers were farmers. Now 2% of people in the United States are farmers. And it's not that we've quit making food. We're making more food than we've ever made. It's that we're incredibly productive and efficient at making food. So we just don't have as many people doing the farming anymore. Instead, they're hosting podcasts. I'm a guy from Oklahoma, and I'm hosting a podcast and talking to you right now. You look at the steel industry, we've lost 400,000 jobs since 1960, 3/4 of the jobs. Well, steel production hasn't gone down by 3/4. Steel production is a little bit lower than it was in the 60s, but not by a huge amount. So what happened there? What happened is we became really, really productive and efficient. So I would again iterate to you, the principal benefit of free trade is alleviating poverty across the world. And that is the main reason that I don't want to get rid of it.
Yeah, but you listen to Rogan, bro?
I listened to the first half of the interview, and then I got kind of bored because it seemed kind of like a puff piece. Like I enjoyed it, but I didn't think he was, unless in the second half he got adversarial, I went, eh.
No. Well, anyway, somebody emailed us. I didn't put it in there where people were like, yeah, it was really interesting. Listen to you guys talk about an expectation for Trump on Rogan, like he was going to be an adversarial interview, when all I know of Rogan is that he's the guy who says, interesting, while an actor says that math doesn't exist.
Yeah, there was a real ball fluffing in that interview. I hated every second of it, really. Okay, well, I do want to address a couple things because I'm obviously not as an evangelist for free trade. I do think that Andrew is right that there have been benefits for people around the world with the labor shopping that free trade allows. So, tariffs back in the day were what made it prohibitively expensive to be paying people in other countries pennies on the dollar. And so what we would do is we would have a tariff. And so the jobs would be here and you would make the products here so you could sell them here. We get rid of all those tariffs and these multinational corporations were allowed to labor shop around the world. And so that's what they did. That's why we have a lot of car companies that are no longer in Detroit, but are now in Mexico and other countries and sending stuff back. And I think that if your main concern is that people in other countries have their standards of living raised, that's one thing. But if you are concerned about Americans having our standards of living lowered, that is a problem. And I think that's something that Trump has tapped into. There's also other dangers that we don't talk about all that much. And we experienced this during COVID, where if you allow these companies to be making their products all over the world and importing them into here, we're not as self-sufficient. So we have supply chains, like masks were a perfect example. They're made very cheaply in China. And when we needed masks, we didn't have them. And so I think that's another problem with free trade.
Medicine was the other. I think masks were one thing, but the pandemic and lockdown and the supply chain disruption there, I think, was probably most alarming when it came to how little we produce in our own medicines.
Yeah. And I mean, COVID just exposed that. We weren't aware of that until we needed that. So I constantly question how many other supply chains are vital and we don't think of them until we don't have them. So that's another problem. And then also transportation and pollution, because we're not making stuff here and selling it here. Instead, we're making stuff all over the world, which has this giant transportation network that's needed. And you have these coal burning ships that are schlepping shit all over the world. There are definite downsides to free trade. And I think that people that want free trade as a concept, I think need to be more realistic to the downsides, because that's how we end up in the situation where you have Donald Trump sounding like he makes sense when he's like, I'm going to put tariffs on everything, which is also incredibly stupid. But these downsides are real. They're felt here by Americans. I don't think a lot of Americans are all that moved, as shitty as this might sound. I don't think they're all that moved by the idea that people in faraway lands are living on $2 a day instead of $1. Like, they don't give a shit if they can't pay their own rent. So, yeah, I think there are real downsides. Donald Trump is not the solution to those, but
he's certainly the one giving voice to it.
Yeah, he's tapped into real grievances.
Yeah, for sure he is. And I think probably the natural disposition of people is to be protectionist, because it sounds good. It feels intuitively good that we should be self-sufficient. We should stand on our own 2 feet. We shouldn't outsource anything to another country. I mean, it breaks down immediately when you start kind of thinking about it internally to the United States. I don't think anybody would think it'd be a good idea to have tariffs between states, that Kansas and Oklahoma and New York should all be self-sufficient. Like we then go, well, that doesn't make sense. But it feels right that, you should intuitively be able to do your own thing. I think there are trade-offs to it, but I think that they're overwhelmingly on the side of benefits for both parties, the developed countries and the undeveloped countries. My principal thing is I really care strongly about alleviating poverty. That is a really, really big value for me. And so I freak out when people attack free trade, because I do not want to relegate the remaining 9% of people on the planet in horrible child-dying poverty to poverty forever. I really don't want to do that. That's the main thing for me. But I get it. People aren't necessarily inhabiting that space. I will push back a little bit. It's not that we don't make things anymore. We make things more than we did in the 50s and 60s. We still have a giant export economy. We're the second largest export economy in the world after China. We make more things now than back in the halcyon period that Trump keeps alluding to. The difference is not that we're not making stuff. It's that we have fewer people making the stuff due to productivity and automation. And it's that we've switched from making lower cost, cheap goods like sandals and T-shirts to putting together medical supplies, computer technology, software, communication, aviation tools. So we've moved from doing things that you buy at the store to things that you buy at an aircraft hangar. And we're still producing more than we did. So there are trade-offs to this, as there are with any economic equation. I think probably the best proxy to this would be automation and the talks we have about automation. And I feel pretty much the same way with automation. There are people that are going to get left behind, and we need to be very conscious of that. We need to be coming up with ways to make sure nobody gets kicked off the bus and never gets back on again. But the solution's not to stop technology. The solution's not to move it forward. And in the same way, the problems that come about by global trade, which again are dwarfed by the benefits of them, are not going to be addressed by what Trump is alluding to on the Rogan podcast, which is trying to move us back to a beaver and tobacco-based economy where the federal government was 5% of the size it was now, and it was all paid for by tariffs. And this kind of idea that rather than looking at complex systems of productivity and automation, we just kind of pick boogeymen to blame lack of jobs on. And it's always good to do it to foreigners. So I stand by my position. Please, anybody that is feeling strongly about trade, please look into comparative advantage. Pick any number of studies that you want to look at. I think you will find that the benefits are profound.
Undecided voter rights. If you've ever wondered who some of these undecided voters are and who political ads actually work on, I'd like to present Exhibit A. My dad, a retired working class voter with an associate's degree. Here are his political preferences and rationalizations I've heard from him over the last few years. For context, we're in Ohio. 2016, Trump vote. He'll run the country like a business. I like Trump. 2020, Biden vote. I can't believe Trump was holding rallies during a pandemic. That guy's a jerk. 2022, Ohio Senate, Tim Ryan. I like that ad of Tim Ryan in a bar. He seemed very relatable. 2024, anti-Biden. Biden's too old. I can't vote for him. 2024, Republican VP search. I like Vance. He's from Ohio. 2024, after Vance declared for VP. That Vance seems like a real dick. 2024, anti-Trump. I can't vote for anyone who says that they think Hitler did good things.
Welcome
really
to the decider of the 2024 election.
Yes,
this man will be.
And
the
who
time
knows?
vote.
And who knows where he is now?
It's like we spend our lives focusing on this stuff, and all three of our votes are completely irrelevant. But this guy, he matters.
Well, not in Ohio. Ohio's not a swing state anymore.
Well, it used to be a swing
Used
state.
to be.
I've never been in a swing state. I've never mattered. So it's like, what am I doing with my life?
Nailed it. Alpaca tax benefits, right? Most alpaca farmers I met don't do it for the profits. They already had a big yard and they started raising alpacas because they're cute and they get tax write-offs from their actual income.
I totally buy that. I told you about the thing I got irritated about, right? I can't remember.
Yes. Yeah. You were mentioning the alpaca regulations, right?
Yeah. You know, there's a lot of that kind of stuff for a while. I don't know if this is in the current farm bill that's currently coagulating in the United States Congress, but when I started looking into politics for a while, the farm bill had it where we were doing subsidies for tobacco farmers at the same time that we were doing sales taxes on tobacco.
Yeah.
And you'd look at that and go, this seems kind of counterproductive.
And finally, Stay Blinken writes, you have rightly mentioned the abysmal work of the Biden State Department a number of times in the past few months, but I still don't know what you think might have been better. I don't think you mean that they should have achieved Middle East peace or that peace in Ukraine was low-hanging fruit, but maybe you do. So obviously, look, I am not privy to the cables of the State Department. All I know is that we have seen two very different philosophies to statecraft over the last 8 years. You have the Trump doctrine of it, which is chaotic but confrontational. And if there are issues for which are raised that Donald Trump deemed important enough, he would sideline what is kind of more traditional diplomatic channels of a low-level staffer reaches out to a low-level staffer from somebody else. And then a month later, they decide whether or not in 6 months they're going to have a general meeting over the phone, at which point a year later, they can decide whether or not the assistant to the assistant is going to meet in person in a third location. And then maybe if everything goes well in 2 terms, you can have 2 oppositional sides have their principals meet, maybe kind of, if only the following 16 things happen. That is what we are experiencing now. And I did not like the Donald Trump statecraft when it was happening. But then I saw a return of the Obama-Biden State Department, for which I think has just watched a lot of situations that could be affected by American influence just careen off the fucking tracks while everybody talks about how they're going to schedule more meetings. And they're very close. Trust me. They're very close. We are pushing this paper at record speeds back and forth, where at the end of the day, we're the 800-pound gorilla. If you want to shut something down, you can shut something down. There are many ways to do it. Even if we don't directly deliver aid to things, I do believe that Iran was pretty successfully put into a cage during the Trump administration because they said, hey, nobody who wants to deal with America should be buying Iranian oil. That sends a fucking chilling effect into the money that comes into Iran because America is a huge buyer of fucking oil. And so these are things that go beyond the State Department element. If you are just cordoning things off to the State Department, you're just talking about fucking diplomats who have meetings that often doesn't comport with reality. And regardless of what you would like to see happen in Ukraine, regardless of what you would like to see happen in Lebanon or Gaza, the U.S. can put a thumb on the scale. The question is where you want that thumb pointed. And that's the problem that I have with the Biden administration writ large, is that it's more of a terror that they're going to pick the wrong thing that just leads everything to kind of continue to careen wherever it's going to go. We are involved in these processes. Make no mistake. The United States is involved. And so if we are going to be involved, I would appreciate decisive action as opposed to leaving it to what I think is an absolutely feckless State Department that has had failure after failure after failure.
Make a play one way or another.
Just do it. Just come fucking on. And like, look, I'm very glad for the work that Jen has done with Ukraine, because you have brought to light that it's not a secret for the Defense Department and the State Department that they want to use Ukraine much in the same way Iran uses Hezbollah and uses Hamas to degrade an enemy. They want to throw Ukraine as grist for the mill into the Russian war machine because we believe that a weakened Russia is better for the United States. And I'm no fan of Russia. I don't believe that Russia should be particularly strong. But if that's the issue, then I guess mission accomplished. They're successfully doing it. I just don't think that it's particularly cost effective, nor do I think is it going to necessarily degrade Russia to the point where they're not going to be a problem. They're going to continue to be a problem because they're still going to be able to sell really, really, really cheap gas to Europe. And no matter what, Europe's going to want that really, really, really cheap gas. And if you were going to do that and you really wanted to cut the nuts off Russia, then why did we stop liquid natural gas deliveries to Europe? Like that's the other thing that I just don't get. Like even if there's a holistic worldview here, then let's see a holistic worldview. And I'm just not seeing it. And I also personally don't like it when Tony Blinken brings a C-SPAN camera so he can play Rockin' in the Free World in Kyiv. It doesn't comport to me to be a particularly serious person, despite the fact that that's his reputation. He's the most serious. He never sleeps. Did you know how many papers he pushed today? It's just, I'm not a fan.
Yeah. Well, and like the whole idea that they want to bleed Russia, which they've literally said, like that's our strategy in Ukraine. Just keep pumping weapons in there so you can bleed Russia. The problem is if you're saying that you're doing this because you stand with Ukraine and you love the Ukrainians, well, they're bleeding too. They've been bleeding nonstop. They're the ones having their villages destroyed and like
an entire generation of young men just wiped out. Like,
yeah. And like there's been so much bloodshed happening, not only in the Ukraine situation, but obviously in Gaza and now in Lebanon. Like what's happening in the world is that the world that is not with us is getting closer together. There was just a BRICS meeting, which BRICS stands for Brazil, Russia, India, China, and I want to say South Africa. I can't remember what the S was, but it used to be 5 countries and now it's something like 18. So the world is now, it's no longer looking to American leadership. It's trying to figure out how they can function in the world without us. And that has been accelerated big time during the Biden administration. So our diplomats are just doing a terrible job if the goal is for us to have American leadership in the world. Like the world is moving away from us. And I think the giant pile of dead bodies is a big part of that.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean,
I agree with you both. And they've same policies push China and Russia in bed together, which is not something I ever want. From a realpolitik realist perspective, you don't want China and Russia to be friends. And in terms of looking for leadership outside of the United States, I've been following these stories that are kind of quietly percolating at the edge of the news cycle. They're not getting a lot of attention, but China and I think United Arab Emirates, maybe Saudi Arabia, several Middle Eastern countries are all kind of playing around with like, maybe we could share some kind of currency and buying a lot of gold and like, wouldn't surprise me if there's a play here in a few years to dethrone the U.S. dollar as a international reserve currency. So, yeah, there's a lot of stuff we're exacerbating.
I have heard some that's less realistic than people might think. That the dollar is still king for a bunch of different reasons, and even the goals that BRICS has set have not been met. But still, either we're going to be the world's leader economically and militarily, for which there's actually not really an argument between the two parties that we should be. We should be the king of the world's economy. We should be the king of the world militarily. And if you're going to do that, you can either do that strategically, or you can do it with a like kind of on paper plan. And that's what I get frustrated with when we talk about the State Department, is that it's a lot of like these on paper plans that I don't think the real world consequences of are expensive and ugly, nor do I think that they get us to where we want to be. Like, look, Russia's not going away. Yeah. Either we have to deal with Russia and we have to box them in economically, which we can, like say what you like the fucking Nord Stream 2 pipeline. Like that was, I'll give credit to Trump on foreign policy there. He said to Europe, don't fucking build it. Don't build it. You're going to be addicted to Russian gas. Like it's going to be a problem for you. Biden came in, allowed it. And then what do? Well, according to
allegedly,
it got fucking blown up. And either it was a bunch of crazy drunk Ukrainians who happened to, you wouldn't believe what happened when we gave them the camera, or it's a CIA cutout operation, which, considering what they had to do, feels more like within the capabilities of what would happen. So we had to fucking blow the thing up anyway. It's just, ugh. Okay. Anyway, there we go. We're Not Wrong Pod at gmail.com is where you email. We're Not Wrong is a production of Dog and Pony Show Audio. Our editor is Will Saddleberg, who got engaged last weekend.
Yay! Hey, congratulations, Will.
On a beach in Hawaii, I was texting with him and I was like, look, he's like, I'm like, when are you doing it? He's like, tonight. Like, when are you leaving? Tomorrow. I'm like, you dumb son of a bitch.
Why?
He was in a fancy hotel in Hawaii. They do a lot of free shit for you.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Like, you need to milk. I'm like, you go down to the front desk and you tell them that you are doing that shit right now.
Yeah.
Like, they will put champagne in your room. They will put chocolates in your room. They will give you free shit because they want desperately for you to come back annually to the same hotel to celebrate your engagement. And they know, that when you propose, they know that, and also you're free fucking marketing whenever you show your picture online. They very much want to make you do it. Hopefully he did it. Otherwise he's fired. Just, you're not fired. There we go. We're PX3, obviously, last final days. We've got a bunch of awesome episodes. Taylor Lorenz is on the program this Wednesday, along with Gabe Fleischer of Wake Up to Politics and Mark Sutton, who wrote a book about how Democrats can help bridge the gender gap, specifically talking to men, which he believes have been steadily leaving the Democratic Party. And we'll see exactly how much of a problem that is electorally next Tuesday. And then on Friday, we've got a 2-part episode with not only Michael Cohen, the man who wrote the book on the modern political campaign, and Tom LoBianco of 24 Sight, who broke the Elon Musk super PAC news of the DOJ coming down on their $1 million a day raffle that they're doing. We talk about everything leading up to the final week of the election. And then we will also have the one and only Kevin Ryan. I'm going to get all of their perspectives and then make my announcement of what scenario I believe will play out on PX3 this week. Jen.
So I had to travel this weekend, and while I was traveling, I decided to torture myself by listening to myself interview members of Congress. And it turns out I actually did a better job than I thought. And so I had interviewed 9 members of Congress. And so it's kind of a best of my interviews. It's their thoughts on how Congress functions. We talk about omnibus bills, and I know it sounds boring, but we got some really interesting information just like from inside, like what it's like to be there. There's some new terms that I had never heard of before. Like, have you ever heard the term Four Corners?
No. Is in the States, like the Four Corners region?
No, but like that is what I would think of. That is apparently inside Congress what they refer to as the majority leader, minority leader, the speaker, and then the
leader.
Yes, and the leader. So it's like he was talking about how those 4 make decisions behind closed doors, and he kept calling them Four Corners. I was like, oh, this is some like inside
lingo.
Yeah. And so it was interesting to talk to these people from the inside. Some of them, it was all over the map. And I think that's what was really interesting. These people are in the same body and they all see it so differently. So it's a fun little taste test, and you can judge me as an interviewer.
I think it's going to be great. Now, it's part of the reason that I'm really, really glad that you came to the conventions to have access to those critters.
Yeah. I ripped the Band-Aid off of my fear of these people.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Heaton.
I am done doing political policy analysis for this election cycle. I'm done doing Trump versus Kamala stuff. I really wanted to do an episode on the show this week, which would be uplifting. And so I am going to do a chapter of American history that I think talks much to the character of America, which is POW's treatment during World War II. There was a moment where Hitler started executing American and British commandos, and we could have at that point started executing German POWs. And I think that it speaks very highly of how we actually function as people. So I have an episode I'm putting together to make everybody feel better about our country that will hopefully be uplifting. And I've written the entire thing specifically to make Jen Briney cry. Jen, it's the only episode I'm going to ask you to listen to this entire year. Listen to it at some point. It's designed to make you cry. For everybody else, know that while Jen is sobbing at home, I did, in small capacity, I did the first live show. So it's got fun group energy to it. And I actually hired some musicians for it. And the whole thing is under the auspices of a Garrison Keillor parody. So if you liked Prairie Home Companion, this is literally a love letter to Prairie Home Companion on the political orphanage this week.
Wow, I didn't know that Germany did that. That's really fucked up.
Yeah.
How is Hitler's reputation ever going to recover? That's it for us. Until next week, happy voting, happy election day. And for Jen Briney and Andrew Heaton, I'm Justin Robert Young. And where not wrong you are.
You can't make that the tagline. You cannot do this.
I thought you were going to say everybody they were garbage today.
We're not wrong. You're garbage.
Oh my God.